It's week 9 of the NFL, and we've got some DraftKings picks on the main slate with a cash lineup and our favorite GPP plays. We'll also get you ready for week 9 of NFL Survivor polls. Did anything strange happen in week 8? Oh, yeah, the darn Bengals. We'll rage about that all coming up next. Hello, everyone. I'm Eric Lee.
And I'm Michael Wiley, and we're the Fantasy Football Consultants.
Hey, we'd like to thank our FFC community for continuing to be active in the comment section with their takes on the main slate for DraftKings and NFL Survivor. Believe it or not, we only have 2 more weeks in order for people to qualify for our free-to-enter $200 DraftKings pool that starts week 12. I really want to give a quick shout out to my favorite call of last week, Timothy Kuto. Kudos for his call for Jamal Agnew. Get him in for week 9.
If you enjoy the show, please remember to always smash the like button, share the video with your friends, and if you haven't yet, hit that red subscribe button followed by the bell icon.
If you're just here for our NFL Survivor content, you're going to be treated to a pretty crazy show. Just use the timestamps to jump to that, because right now we're going into the DraftKings studio to figure out our cash lineup on the main slate.
Well, let's start against this awful Kansas City defense. I am so disappointed in the Kansas City Chiefs, just watching them again this Monday night. They should have probably lost the game against the Giants, who looked atrocious themselves. They are one of the worst teams against the pass, one of the worst defenses giving up points and yards. And I really like Aaron Jones, even though he's not getting the rushing yards that he can get, and certainly he was benefited this week with Devontae Adams out. But that was a game script that didn't necessarily play towards them getting a lot of yards to the running back, and Aaron Jones just continued to get the touches that he needs to get to put up fantasy points. So I like it 7,200. I think Aaron Jones is the feature back this week to make sure you put in your fantasy lineup, especially with Henry out, a couple other guys not on the main slate. I really think Aaron Jones is the guy to start with. What do you think?
Yeah, boy, Kansas City's defense just continues to bleed yards and points. So I like attacking them. I like attacking this game, which I think is just going to be a major shootout. 54.5 points is the over-under in this game. You got to get some exposure, and I like that we got it with Aaron Jones. So the guy, Michael, that I want to talk about is at 7,900, Austin Eckler. Boy, remember a long time ago in the very first game of the season, everyone started to freak out. How come Austin Eckler didn't catch any passes in the very first game of the season? Ever since then, he's been heavily involved in the passing game, just like we would expect, and that's so valuable in a full PPR. But in addition to that, he's been getting the goal line carries. He went almost all of last year not having any rushing touchdowns. He already has 4 in the last 4 weeks. And the matchup you have to love, going up against a Philadelphia defense that doesn't do well against the run. They're favored. I like Eckler this week.
Yeah, no, I Eckler is he's a one-man wrecking crew. For him to put up that kind of yardage and points against New England, who's, really a special defense, I think, this year, and just kept them in games they didn't belong in. Against Philadelphia, who had a nice defensive week this week against Detroit, but it was against Detroit. It's time for the Chargers to bounce back, and Eckler's going to be a big part of that.
All right, folks, pay close attention. We're going to get Eckler in our lineup. But Michael, do you notice the blue light special? I've go back to running back. I've never seen this guy, Christian McCaffrey, at only $8,000. He's $2,000 less. So obviously you want to look in here and go, well, what's going on? Is there any chance of him playing? They say that he's supposed to practice on Wednesday, but they're saying there's a question about whether he will be actually back. I don't think he'll play this week. However, if you get the news that Christian McCaffrey is active and he's a go, you got to get him into your lineup. And I don't have a problem switching off my guy I just talked about. He's only $100 more, Austin Eckler, because I mean, who else does Carolina have these days to produce points? And he's just such a workhorse against New England that's actually struggled against running backs.
Yeah, we could probably have a whole show on what's going on from a fantasy perspective across the league. There's rumors that Carolina is willing to part with him for Deshaun Watson. It's really surprising to hear, but yeah, no question. The most important fantasy tool in the last several years has been McCaffrey. He will continue to be that throughout the rest of this year. For 8,000, if he's playing, got to take a look.
All right. So for now, we'll keep him on our bench. What are we going to do at wide receiver?
Well, it's time for us to save some money. So let's go with the most expensive person and keep picking on the Kansas City Chiefs, because Davante Adams is going to be out of the COVID protocol starting on Thursday. So he get a couple of days of practice in. He's healthy. He's going to be ready to go. He missed out on that wonderful game against the Arizona Cardinals, which I was in Arizona for. It was a great game until the very end. What a bummer of an ending for Arizona. Davante Adams is going to rack up some fantasy points this week against Kansas City. You got to have this upside in your lineup, and obviously a super high floor.
Michael, did you get notification from DraftKings that they raised their overall salary limit? Or Aaron Jones, Austin Eckler, and Davante Adams all in the same lineup. Wow. Look, you guys don't need us lecturing you how good Davante Adams is. Just throw in the fact that he's going up against the Kansas City Chiefs. This is going to be a shootout. So we got Jones on one side, Davante Adams on the other. Cooper Kupp is not even on the main slate. So in my opinion, we clearly have the best wide receiver in the land to choose from. Great pick. I better save us some money.
Time to save some money.
I'm going to save money, but not a lot, because I'm going to get you the clear number one wide receiver. This is just on his team against a very bad defense. I'm talking about Brandon Cooks, who faces the Miami Dolphins this week. I'm telling you, Cooks is someone who just consistently seems to perform, and he is by far the best talent that they have on their team. Look, I'm fine with Davis Mills continuing to be the quarterback. I still hope upon hope week that maybe Tyrod Taylor would come back. That would give an extra little bump to Cooks. But even so, this is a situation where I don't think we just need to rely on garbage time, because this Miami team, I don't think is that good. And this, I think, can be a competitive game.
You know who else I think is a fine play this week? He's back. He's healthy. He now has a game under his belt, but he's still really inexpensive because he's freshly back from being on the injured reserve. That's Jerry Jeudy going up against a Dallas defense that has leaked a little bit to wide receivers. Yeah, they do have Tavon Diggs, who's, leading the league in interceptions. But he doesn't necessarily blanket one individual. And frankly, it could be Cortland Sutton, who's had a great year up to this point. The Broncos haven't been an offensive powerhouse, but Jerry Jeudy, I think, is their most impressive talent. He's back. He's healthy. He's going to get his targets. I think he's going to have a good week.
Yeah, and don't sleep on Teddy Bridgewater. He is a quality quarterback. The issue always with the Broncos is, do they need to throw? And he faces the Dallas Cowboys, who should get Dak Prescott back. So I think the Cowboys are going to put up points in this. So Denver's got to likely throw to keep up. I'm really shocked, Michael, that this guy is available at such a bargain basement price at only $3,000. It's Tyler Conklin. So let's take a look at his game log. Try not to look at what's that head thing? Is that a bun?
It's a man bun, they call it.
Okay, well, it's helmets on, so I'm not going to let that bother me. What doesn't bother me is the fact is that in the last 4 games, he's had almost 6 targets per game. I like that with a $3,000 price. And these are high catch targets, Michael, that are being thrown to him. So he's converted them into receptions. The only thing you don't like is he hasn't gotten a lot of TDs, but at 6'3", the guy should still be a red zone threat. And I expect against Baltimore, Michael, Baltimore, dead last against the pass, dead last against tight ends. Gee, Tyler Conklin is a pass catching tight end. I'll like that.
Yeah, at $3,000, I think this is a great place to save money, so that you can go out and get the workhorses that we have elsewhere. He could perform as well as pretty much any tight end. Again, I know he hasn't been getting his touchdown looks, but I think Minnesota is going to be wise to employ their tight end in this game, given how bad Baltimore is against the tight end, and Minnesota desperately needs a win. So we still got to save money. We're still broke. Do we go to quarterback yet, or do we just fill out the ranks and see what we got left for quarterback?
I'll go quarterback.
All
quarterback. Right. Again, we can't spend up to get one of these high price guys. Thanks to Davante Adams, Aaron Jones, and Austin Eckler. But you know what? I get a guy that I actually have a lot of confidence with, and we can save money at $5,800. It's Tua. And that's all I'm going to call him. I'm not going to attempt to say his last name. Gosh, Michael, at the beginning of the season, I had some doubts about him, but at least from a fantasy perspective, this guy can ball out, and he does it in a situation where now he's getting some weapons to go along with it. Devontae Parker is now back. So he's got Waddle and Parker, and of course, a great pass catching tight end in Mike Gesicki. And he will run a little bit, sometimes around the goal line, which is nice. And you gotta love his matchup. He faces.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. But you got to be honest. We're picking him because he's going up against Houston, right? Like I appreciate all those good things you just said about Tua, but it's really who he's playing against, right? Let's face it.
You're right. He's a home favorite and a 7-point favorite with an implied total of 27 because he's going up against Houston. So I like it for $5,800. We have a whopping $6,800 to do a defense and a flex.
Well, let's talk about defense first. I know we usually go there last, but the reason I want to go here is because there's really nothing around that $3,000 range that's exciting me. Not that we could really afford it. We want to make sure we get something out of our flex spot, but you got to pay towards 3,500 or more to get a defense that's exciting. So, with that, guess there's a defense actually at the very bottom that has done all right from a fantasy perspective. And that is the Minnesota Vikings. They've put up an average of 7 fantasy points per game.
You scared me. I thought you were going to say Jacksonville.
No, they've done the worst, and they're playing Buffalo. And they're going up against a Baltimore team that has given up some fantasy points. And so, Minnesota has they have 24 sacks on the season. That's pretty freaking good, right? So they get to the quarterback, and guess what? Sometimes Lamar Jackson holds on to the ball a little bit too much. So at $2,200, that saves us some money for the flex position. So I think this is the place to go, unless you want to get somebody who you can't count on getting any fantasy points.
All right, so I'm gonna scroll down in the flex
to see where the red goes away. So we're still in red, unfortunately. There we go.
All right. So taking a look at the guys that we have to play with. And a lot of them, Michael, aren't that exciting to me. So I am looking here at $4,600, and I'm not impressed. But we can do something that is not normally done, that a lot of people don't think about doing, which is if there is another value at tight end, that can really free up elsewhere. And I'm looking at the guy at the bottom of the list, Dallas Goedert. So let's talk a little bit about Dallas Goedert. So let's start with the fact that we can afford him. He's $4,500, but Zach Ertz is gone. He is the only man in town. All right. I want to show you last week's performance by quarterback Jalen Hurts. What did Jalen Hurts do? What kind of passing game did Jalen Hurts? 9 completion on 14 attempts for only 103 yards. He burned a lot of people, including us, I believe, on DraftKings. Not on FanDuel, but on DraftKings. Remember that? 9 completions? Well, what did Dallas Goedert do? Man, Michael, he got everything. He got 6 of the 9 passes and 72 of the 100 some odd yards. So, look, there's an argument he's the number 1 target on the team. And let me tell you something. They just got way up on Detroit and just stopped passing the ball. That's not going to happen this week against the Chargers. They are not going to get way up on the Chargers. They actually think they'll be playing from behind. They're going to be throwing the ball more opportunity for Goddard this week.
Yeah, I mean, don't be too surprised by these stats here. I know the Chargers look like they have the worst rushing defense in the league. I think that is not an accurate picture of what we're going to see over the rest of the season from these Chargers. They have really a couple of atrocious weeks, really disappointing loss to New England this week. I think this game should be actually pretty close. Philadelphia does have the edge in that they're at home, but the Chargers are a better team. So you're right. I think Dallas Goedert is going to be one of the beneficiaries of the fact that this is not going to be a Detroit Lions blowout. What a really rough game for Jared Goff, throwing the ball away on 4th down. Note to any quarterback out there, on 4th down, if you go for it, you have to at least give your team a chance, because an interception, even though it looks worse on the stat line, is no worse than turning the ball over on downs, unless, of course, you let them walk into the end zone.
Yeah, well, you got contract negotiations as a quarterback. You don't want those statistics. So, all right, there is our lineup. I just want to remind everybody that we have $100 more left over, and that $100 can be added to Austin Eckler to make Christian McCaffrey if and only if he is active and playing. All right, everybody, let's talk GPP.
All right, real quick here, Eric. I know if you look at the opponents on these guys, it's not necessarily going to excite too much, because the Chargers have looked much tougher against the pass, as has Philadelphia. But I just really like the upside of what should be a high-scoring game. Hurts to Goddard. We already talked about this. This is the go-to guy for Jalen Hurts. I think he's going to get a lot more yardage and still get some yards on the ground as well. And then on the Chargers, I think the guy to go back with is Mike Williams. You could obviously also go with his counterpart, Keenan Allen. But I think this year it looks like Mike Williams is the guy for the Chargers. What do you think, Eric?
Yeah, he has a bigger upside, I would say, for GPP. I favor Keenan Allen with a slightly lower price in cash games. For GPP, a guy to really go off, I like Mike Williams. I also like the fact that this stack really saves you a lot of money, and you can get exposure to that Kansas City and Green Bay game with some big name guys on each side to fill out your lineup in a small mini stack, because we really didn't spend a lot of money on this stack. All right, let's talk Survivor. First, we've got to do a debrief about last week. And if you want to go straight to the timestamp where we start talking about week 9, feel free to jump. But Michael, for the first time in FFC history that we had both co-hosts pick a team that lost. Do you know that? In 4 years of doing this. Now, we had plenty of weeks where we both picked the same team, but the team always won. And we both individually have lost one. So I guess I'll let you kick off. I have plenty to say. What would you like to say about the Cincinnati Bengals, who we and about 50% of the people playing Survivor Bowls picked the Bengals since they had no future value and they were a very high favorite, going up against one of the worst offenses in football with a backup QB and their number one wide receiver, Corey Davis, out?
Yeah, I am at a loss of words. I have to say, so, first off, hats off to Robert Saleh. And also, congratulations to the Jets, a nice home win for them. But really just a disappointing performance by the Cincinnati Bengals. Yeah, you can talk all you want about that spearing call that you never see called, and, could have gone the other way because the offensive player put his head down as well. And, who knows what happens there. I think it's pretty high likelihood that Cincinnati marches the ball down the field, at least gets a field goal and puts it in overtime. I don't really want to blame it on that. I mean, the Jets had no business putting up 34 points against what had up to this point been a pretty solid Cincinnati defense. It really looked like Cincinnati didn't come to play. They must have been looking beyond the mark, preparing for their next game, which I've seen happen before to football teams when they feel like they have such an easy win on the schedule. Yeah, we missed, and what a rough time to miss. But
okay, you're way too calm. I'm outraged, everybody. This is unbelievable. This hasn't happened since 1950. You got knocked out in the pool back in 1950 when you did this. That a player playing their first start has thrown for 400 yards and 3 TDs. More than that, Mike White threw for 37 completions in 45 attempts. They had all these short routes, about 8 to 9, 10 yards, very easy completions, and it just worked. I disagree with you when you say the Cincinnati team didn't come to play. The offense did. The offense was outstanding, and they put up 31 points. They moved the ball, but it's absolutely unacceptable for the defense not to be able to slow down the Jet offense. I will not blame that. I won't even blame turnovers. The Jets had 3 turnovers. They had more turnovers than the Bengals. Yes, it was unfortunate that at the end of the game when they were up by 4, they had the deflection, but the Jets had a couple of deflections that went their way where the Bengals had interceptions. So I just think the takeaway is that any team could beat any team. And when you have 50% of the people going against one team, you might want to consider about pivoting. And I thought about that, but you know what? The pivot would have been to Kansas City, and Kansas City came just as close to losing as Cincinnati did.
Yeah, I could have gone with New England, so I kind of regret that. I do want to kind of indict the coach a little bit. I mean, there was a situation early on the game when it was 7-7 and the Bengals had a chance to kick a field goal from the 4-yard line, or a 21-yard field goal, and they went for it and didn't get it. And to me, it just kind of showed poor coaching decisions. Like, they thought they had the game so much in hand that they didn't need to take easy points. So I actually think there was some oversight here. I've seen it before as a coach. Yeah, you're right. Any given Sunday in the NFL, more than perhaps any league, but preparation makes a big deal. And I think that the Cincinnati team, maybe, their offense put up points, but that was because they're the better team, not necessarily because they were better prepared or made better decisions. Yeah, and actually a chance to pick on the Jets again this week, and maybe we don't do it, right?
Well, let's talk about this week. Here are the top picks. Buffalo, 13.5-point favorites. Buffalo's always on this list, Michael. They're the only team that is on the road. They're at Jacksonville, still almost 2 touchdown favorites. The Colts, 10.5-point favorites over those New York Jets. Then we have 2 7.5-point favorites. Dallas and the Rams playing Denver and Tennessee respectively. And both Pittsburgh and Miami are at home, and they're both 6.5-point favorites over Chicago and Houston. Not on this list, at least up for consideration, the New Orleans Saints are at home, 6-point favorites over Atlanta. With Calvin Ridley out, it made me something that I think it's worth thinking about. But they also have their injuries with Jameis Winston out, We're not sure whether Taysom Hill would play. And if he does, he's coming off a concussion, hasn't played hardly at all this year. I can't go with New Orleans this week. What about you, Michael? Could you advise? When I say I can't, I have them available. I just wouldn't do it.
Yeah, no, I mean, impressive win against the Bucs this week, right? And they did it actually without Winston for most of the game because of the injury happening in the first half. I do think Taysom Hill is an upgrade from Trevor Siemian, and you have Siemian, and if you need him. But yeah, I mean, you've picked the Saints against the Atlanta Falcons before, and I don't feel comfortable in this situation either.
All right, so let me just announce what I believe people should pick, because my number one pick this week is the Buffalo Bills. Now, I know they have a lot of future value, but I still think this is the best game of any rest of the year, and there's a bigger difference of confidence that I have this week picking Buffalo over anybody else. So, Michael, any comment about that, about Buffalo?
Yeah, no, the Jacksonville Jaguars were atrocious coming off a bye week. Everybody expected them to, put some, points up against Seattle without Russell Wilson, and they couldn't do it. It was pretty disappointing. There's a possibility that Robinson might not play this week.
Let's see if you agree with me. Despite the fact that the Lions have not won a game yet, I think Jacksonville is the worst team in the NFL.
Yeah, no, I mean, they've definitely looked the worst. Urban Meyer looks like he's not ready for NFL, even though they have some talent. I mean, it's really disappointing how they performed this year.
All right, so what you might say, well, what if I already used Buffalo? For example, both Michael and I already used Buffalo. Where would you go? So here's my analysis, Michael. I think you have to talk about the Colts. If you have not picked the Colts, my strong recommendation is you pick the Colts either this week or next week. Next week, they play, guess who? The Jacksonville Jaguars at home. After what would be a mini bye, because they're playing Thursday, and you know how much I love Thursday games this week against the Jets. So guess what? My recommendation is don't pick the Colts this week. Save them for next week. Michael, do you agree or disagree? You might.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think so. While I feel like Indianapolis is poised to go on a run, what a disappointing ending they had against the Tennessee Titans this week. What a bad left-handed touchdown gift that Carson Wentz gave to them after what looked like a pretty good start. I think you need another week of seeing what the Jets have in order to make sure that they're going to go back to the bottom rung. And yeah, save them for, like you say, a mini bye week against a Jacksonville team that's atrocious. So I agree. Let's save them.
All right. Another team I'll eliminate off this list is the LA Rams. Now, it could be enticing after Henry went down. They're playing Tennessee, and you're like, oh, let's just take advantage of them. But look, guys, they have much better games later in a week where you need them more. We always have been talking about week 13 when they host, guess who? The Jacksonville Jaguars, who we can pick on, right? So not the Rams. So therefore, we have remaining either Dallas, Pittsburgh, or Miami. All three teams are at home. They face Denver, Chicago, and Houston. What do you think, Michael? Let me just make this comment. Miami has no future value. Pittsburgh has only a future value for week 10 when they play Detroit, but we already said we're going to pick the Colts next week. So effectively, Pittsburgh has no future value. And Dallas plays Atlanta next week, but we're not going to pick them. We're going to pick the Colts. And granted, they get Washington at the end of the season. So they have only a little future value. So I think it really comes down to, Michael, who do you think is going to win most between Miami, Pittsburgh, and Dallas? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think that's the right analysis. I think Pittsburgh's the easiest one to eliminate just because you still don't know what you're going to get from Ben Roethlisberger week in and week out. And even though Chicago has looked very beatable from week to week. I think at some point Fields is going to show up and scare somebody. And so I think that's the least likely of the picks, unless of course Dak Prescott is out. But to me, the pick this week, the sneaky pick this week is Miami Dolphins. I feel like Houston still hasn't shown that they're able to win games, and the Dolphins are at full capacity unless I'm missing anything. And their defense actually still can make plays. And so even though I don't think they're a very good team, I think Miami is going to be of the teams on here, the one that most confidently takes care of business. I know you don't agree with that, but that's where I'm at.
I know, that's fine. I just don't trust them. I just don't trust Miami. And I understand what you're saying is, look, I'm picking on by far the weakest of the three teams, Denver, Chicago, and Houston. You're saying is Houston. So my pick this week, my suggestion, assuming that Buffalo you've already used, is going to be Dallas, because I plan to use Indianapolis the next week. That's assuming Prescott is 100% active. All right, everybody, take care, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.